So imagine someone just walks up and hands you $10 million today.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Right. Tax-free, clear as day. But there's one major catch. You have to give every single penny of it away to a good cause.
Every penny.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Who do you give it to? And honestly, much more importantly, why are you choosing them over someone else?
That is the real question, isn't it?
Exactly. Keep that thought in your head because today we are absolutely tearing apart the secret psychology of giving. And before we jump into the deep end of this, I want to make sure you have the map for this journey. If you want to explore the real-world resources and guides we're using today, you need to keep Nonprofit.Courses in mind.
For sure.
Head over to Nonprofit.Courses for all the deeper reading. So let's talk about that $10 million. From the outside looking in, society tends to slap one very convenient, kind of lazy label on the act of giving money away.
Yeah, we call it altruism.
Right, altruism. We assume anyone writing a massive check or even just spending their weekend volunteering is operating from this generic, universal desire to just do good.
It's a really comfortable assumption.
Yeah.
But it's completely wrong.
Completely.
Totally wrong. Treating charity as a single monolithic behavior is honestly one of the quickest ways to misunderstand the people around you.
Yeah.
Whether you're running a massive global charity or, just trying to get funding for a neighborhood park.
Or figuring out why your coworker is so obsessed with their weekend volunteering.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Assuming everyone shares the same generic motivation will just lead you right into a brick wall.
Which is why we're pulling from 3 distinct sources today to completely dismantle this myth of the monolithic donor. We're looking at a detailed book review of a classic text called The 7 Faces of Philanthropy by Russ Allen Prince and Karen Marufile.
A total classic.
We also have a fantastic video review of that exact same book by Matt Hugg for Think NP. And finally, we're layering in a strategic guide on event engagement that takes these academic concepts and kind of forces them into the real world.
Our mission for this deep dive is to isolate and examine the 7 distinct psychological profiles that actually drive philanthropy. But I really want to stress this for you listening. Do not tune this out if you aren't a professional fundraiser.
Oh, absolutely not.
This framework is basically a masterclass in human motivation. It reveals the hidden gears turning inside people's heads when they make, well, resource-based decisions.
But before we start naming these 7 faces, we have to talk about where this framework actually comes from, because you can't just invent a psychological profiling system out of thin air and expect people to buy into it.
You definitely shouldn't. The historical context here is critical, and Matt Hugg's video review breaks this down perfectly. Prince and File didn't just guess at these profiles.
Right.
They conducted a massive, rigorous survey of high-net-worth individuals. But here is the catch. They did this back in the 1990s.
Wait, the 90s?
Yeah. Hugg points out that the people they surveyed were often from the greatest generation, the World War II era, individuals who had amassed significant wealth, survived the Depression, and were, aggressively funding various organizations.
Yeah.
The authors sat down with them and meticulously mapped out their underlying motivations.
Okay, let's unpack this. I have to jump in here. The 1990s. Based on the World War II generation?
I know, it sounds...
That feels like a massive red flag. If this foundational study is based on wealthy folks from 30 years ago who grew up during the Great Depression, isn't this framework horribly outdated?
I totally get that reaction.
I mean, the world has entirely changed. Treating a modern donor in their 30s who made their money in crypto like a 1990s industrialist seems as ridiculous as treating all voters or all grocery shoppers exactly the same.
It sounds ridiculous on the surface, yes. But what's fascinating here is that we have to separate the mechanics of giving from the psychology of giving.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, yes, the mechanics are totally different now. The demographic data points have shifted, the percentage of wealth held by different groups has completely inverted, and tax laws are virtually unrecognizable compared to the 90s.
For sure.
But the underlying psychological engine of the human being deciding to write that check, that hasn't whipped an inch.
So the human operating system hasn't had a major update, essentially.
Exactly.
The how and the what might change, but the why stays the same.
Think about it like a deep-seated personality trait. Matt Hugg notes that these characterizations carry forward across generations as people move through different life cycles.
Okay.
A 30-year-old today might be using a digital donor portal on their phone instead of writing a paper check at a country club. But their fundamental core desire, whether that is a desperate need for peer recognition or a quiet desire to fulfill a moral duty, is identical to someone sitting in a boardroom in 1995.
Okay, I can buy that. The technology changes, the human ego doesn't.
Beautifully put.
So, if the psychology holds up, let's look at the first set of these profiles. I want to start with the extroverts. If you go to a charity gala or even like a loud community bake sale, these are the people you're actually going to see work in the room.
Yeah. The highly visible profiles. The first face we encounter here is the socialite. And the overarching motto for the socialite is, doing good is fun.
Which honestly sounds a little superficial, if we're being honest. Like they just want to party.
It's so easy to dismiss them that way, but their motivation is actually about social leverage.
Leverage.
Yeah. The socialite is driven by social connections and peer recognition. They view supporting a cause as a highly legitimate, structured opportunity to improve their social standing and connect with a specific tier of like-minded individuals.
Oh, I see.
They want to align themselves with a good mission, absolutely, but they specifically want to earn positive attention from their social circles while doing it.
So it's like someone who buys 50 boxes of the most expensive Girl Scout cookies, but only does it when the rest of the neighborhood is outside to see the delivery.
Spot on, yes.
They thrive on visibility. The sources highlight that they want the prominent seating at the gala, they want the leadership roles on the committee, they want their name in bold font in the evening's program.
They want to be seen doing the good work.
Right, but then you have this other extroverted face right next to them, which is loud but fundamentally different, the communitarian.
Yes, the communitarian. Their motto is, doing good makes sense, and the psychological difference here is vital.
Okay, lay it on me.
While the socialite is entirely focused on their specific peer group and personal visibility, the communitarian is looking at the broader geographic ecosystem. They want their local neighborhood, their specific town, or their region to thrive. They view their philanthropy as a collective community duty.
Let me try a metaphor here, because I want to make sure the mechanics of this are clear.
Yeah.
The communitarian views their town like a massive ship that they happen to be sailing on.
I like this.
If there is a hole in the hull, they do not care if the hole is in someone else's cabin. They're going to pitch in to fix it, because if the ship goes down, they go down with it. It's an act of collective self-preservation.
That is the perfect way to look at their internal mechanism. They believe that supporting local institutions, the hospital, the library, the community center, is just fundamental to a healthy, functioning society that they have to live in.
Right.
For you, the listener, think about your own neighborhood. Think about the people who are always organizing the local charity runs or shouting at the school board meetings.
Oh, yeah, we all know one.
Exactly. Are they there because they love the spotlight and want to be seen by the mayor, like our socialite? Or are they there because they feel a deep-rooted, almost existential responsibility to the town's survival?
Because identifying which face they are completely changes how you use them. If you're trying to organize an event, the socialite is your hype squad.
Yes.
You put them on the VIP organizing committee because they attract other high-profile socialites. They make the event the place to be. Exactly. But the communitarian, that is your grassroots engine. You put them on the ticket sales committee because they'll go door to door and activate their local networks because they genuinely believe everyone in town needs to pitch in.
Exactly. You do not ask the grassroots communitarian to just sit quietly at the VIP table, and you don't ask the high society socialite to go door to door selling $5 raffle tickets.
That would be a
They're
disaster.
a total mess.
Yeah.
You have to meet them where their psychological motivation lives.
Okay, so the socialite and the communitarian explain the loud, highly visible giving. But what about the massive anonymous checks that just mysteriously show up in the mail?
Ah, yes.
The people who specifically do not want to be seen. Who is sending those?
This brings us to the individuals driven by a deep internal or moral compass, rather than external social validation. The next two faces are the devout and the altruist.
Let's start with the devout.
Let's do it. Their guiding principle is, doing good is God's will.
So for them, this isn't about social standing at all. It's not even about community building in the civic sense we just talked about.
Not at all. For the devout, giving is a direct moral or spiritual obligation. It is seen as an ethical responsibility tied inextricably to their faith or their core personal value.
Right, it's deeply personal.
Very. And the mechanics of how they give are fascinating. The sources point out that appeals to the devout must focus intensely on the direct human element. They want to know exactly how a donation directly helps a vulnerable family or feeds a specific child.
And the strategy guide explicitly notes a very interesting detail here, which, we're just impartially reporting from the source text. The devout are typically not interested in government intervention.
Right, because for the devout, the moral test is individual, not bureaucratic.
Oh, that makes sense.
They view charity as a personal spiritual duty. Deferring that duty to a sprawling government program basically strips the spiritual significance away from the act of giving. It has to be a direct line from their conscience to the person in need.
That makes total sense when you frame it as a personal moral test. Now, what about the altruist? Because their motto is, doing good feels right, which sounds basically like the dictionary definition of charity.
It is the purest form of empathy. The altruist gives simply because they want to help those in need without tying it to a specific religious mandate like the devout.
Okay.
But the absolute key differentiator, the mechanical quirk of the altruist, is that they actively shun recognition.
I hate it.
They despise the spotlight. They do not want their name carved into the side of a building. They don't want a plaque, and they certainly don't want to be called up on stage at a dinner.
Wait, I have a massive structural question about that. Let's say you're tasked with planning a huge, highly publicized gala event for a hospital. If the altruist actively hates the spotlight and doesn't want anyone looking at them, how do you even invite them?
That's tricky.
A loud, crowded gala is the literal opposite of what their psychology wants. Do you just write them off entirely for that campaign?
You don't write them off, but you absolutely do not push the event on them. The strategic move here, according to the guides, is what we might call the off-the-hook strategy.
Off the hook.
Yeah. You approach the altruist and ask for an unrestricted donation in lieu of attendance.
Okay, let's define that really quickly for the listener. An unrestricted donation.
Right. An unrestricted donation is the holy grail for a charity. It's money given with zero strings attached.
Nice.
The organization doesn't have to spend it on a specific, flashy new program. They can use it to keep the lights on, pay the staff, or fix a leaky roof.
Which isn't very glamorous.
Not at all. But the altruist loves this because it's purely about utility, not vanity. So you go to them and say, we have this big, loud gala coming up. We know that's not your scene, but if you'd like to support the mission quietly, here's an avenue to do it.
Wow. By acknowledging their psychological discomfort with the party and literally telling them they don't have to come, you actually make them more likely to write the check. You respect their internal mechanism.
That is brilliant. Okay, so from pure empathy and moral duty, we need to pivot, because not everyone is operating on spiritual vibes or pure empathy. What about the people who treat charity like Wall Street?
Ah, the transactional givers. These next two phases are deeply grounded in return on investment and balancing the scales. We're talking about the investor and the repayer.
Let's put the investor under the microscope first. Their motto is, doing good is good business.
They view their philanthropy almost as an extension of their corporate or financial interests. They aren't just giving money away, they are deploying capital to solve a problem that indirectly benefits their world.
So they want data.
Oh, they demand to see measurable efficiency.
The Event Strategy Guide gave a really concrete example of this regarding public education. An investor isn't funding a local school's tech program just because it gives them warm fuzzies.
They're funding it because they want to build a prepared, highly skilled workforce for the future economy. They want to know exactly how their capital injection improves the local talent pool, which eventually drives local economic growth, which, you guessed it, benefits their business.
They see the macroeconomic picture. If the communitarian is trying to patch the hole in the ship, the investor is trying to upgrade the ship's engine so it gets to port faster and makes more money.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I look at the investor like a judge on the TV show Shark Tank.
That's perfect.
If you pitch them a charity, they're sitting there asking, what are the key performance indicators? What is the 5-year economic ROI of this program?
Yep.
But take that a step further. If an investor treats charity like a business, does that mean they'll ruthlessly pull their funding if the charity has a bad quarter or misses their metrics?
Absolutely. If the data doesn't support the investment, they are out. They are not driven by blind loyalty. It can be. But the trade-off is that if you can prove your metrics, the investor is incredibly valuable because they are the ones who can pick up the phone and connect an organization to massive corporate sponsorships.
Which is the total opposite of our next phase, the repayer. Their motto is doing good in return.
Yes, the psychology of cosmic debt.
Cosmic debt, I love that.
The repayer feels a profound, almost heavy sense of gratitude. These are your university alumni, your former patients of a specialized hospital, or people who were past beneficiaries of a scholarship program.
They remember who helped them.
Exactly. They want to balance the scales. They feel they owe a debt to the specific institution that shaped their lives or saved them when they were vulnerable.
It's essentially weaponized nostalgia. If the investor is a ruthless Shark Tank judge looking at spreadsheets, the repayer is like a proud family member.
Such a good comparison.
Their connection is entirely emotional and anchored in the past. But mechanically, they are incredible assets, right?
Yeah.
Because they are your ultimate ambassadors.
Oh, without a doubt.
A repayer can tap into their personal networks of former classmates or fellow patients and say, look what this place did for us 10 years ago. We owe it to them to ensure they can do it for the next generation.
That guilt and gratitude mix is a really powerful engine. But to utilize it, you have to know how to talk to them. You don't hand a repayer a spreadsheet of macroeconomic data. You hand them a story about a student who is sitting in the exact same chair they sat in 20 years ago.
It all comes down to translating the ask, which leaves us with just one face left, the final piece of the puzzle, the long game.
Yes, the seventh face represents the longest-term perspective of all the Dynast. Their motto is, doing good is a family tradition.
So this is inherited giving, like old money.
It is deeply, inextricably tied to their family's historical legacy and their personal identity. For the Dynast, they learned from an incredibly early age, often just by watching their parents or grandparents, that supporting certain civic or cultural causes is simply what their family does.
It's in their blood.
Exactly. It is part of their psychological burden of inheriting wealth.
The sources mention that these are typically the folks who utilize heavy financial vehicles, like family foundations and donor-advised funds.
Yes.
Let's do a quick ELI 5 explain. I'm 5 for the listener on donor-advised funds because that term gets thrown around a lot in wealth management, and it can be confusing.
Basically, a donor-advised fund is like a special, dedicated charity bank account. The individual puts a massive amount of money into this account, and they get the tax break for it immediately, right now.
Okay, that part is nice.
Very nice. But the money doesn't have to be given to the actual charities right away. They can sit back, let the money grow tax-free, and advise the fund over years or even decades on exactly which charities should get the payouts.
So it's a holding tank for philanthropy.
Precisely.
Which means you can't just walk up to a Dynast at a cocktail party and ask them to write a quick check for $500 to buy new uniforms for the softball team.
Their capital is locked up in long-term legacy planning. You absolutely cannot. The strategy guide emphasizes that a Dynast's influence extends far beyond a single event or a single fiscal year. To engage a Dynast, you have to engage them early, and you have to engage them often, over years, to prove that your organization is worthy of being written into their multi-generational family narrative.
Okay, let's pull all the way back and look at the board. We have all 7 faces, the Socialite chasing visibility, the Communitarian patching the ship, the Devout fulfilling a moral duty, the Altruist giving quietly out of pure empathy, the Investor demanding economic ROI, the Repayer balancing their cosmic debt, and the Dynast managing a generational legacy.
If we connect all of this to the bigger picture, the ultimate takeaway from Prince and File's work, and the reason it is still being taught in strategy guides today, is that it forces active listening.
Right?
It forces you to stop projecting your own motivations onto other people.
So, what does this all mean for you, listening right now? Whether you're a professional trying to raise millions to build a new hospital wing, or you're just a frustrated parent trying to get 5 other parents to help out at a neighborhood bake sale, the lesson is exactly the same.
It really is.
You wouldn't pitch the bright lights of a high society gala to an altruist who just wants to give quietly. And you wouldn't hand a dry, data-heavy, 40-page economic impact report to a socialite who just wants to know if the mayor is going to be sitting at their table.
It is the absolute definition of relationship-based communication. You have to identify the psychological gears turning inside the person sitting across the table from you, and then tailor your language, your ask, and your expectations to fit their specific machinery.
It is a complete paradigm shift. We've successfully moved away from this outdated, lazy idea of a generic monolithic altruism into an incredibly rich 7-part psychological framework. And it proves that even as the technology changes, even as the tax laws rewrite themselves every few years, the human heart, the actual reason someone decides to part with their resources, remains brilliantly, stubbornly constant.
It does. But this raises one final, rather methy question, and it's something I really want you, the listener, to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Ooh, leave them with a cliffhanger.
Right. We spent this entire time talking about these 7 faces as individuals operating in a vacuum. But what happens when these faces collide?
Oh, wow. That's a brilliant complication.
Imagine a married couple sitting across from you. They share a bank account.
Okay.
But one of them is a socialite who desperately wants the gala spotlight and the naming rights on the building. And their spouse is a pure altruist who insists on giving completely anonymously.
Oh man, how do they write one check?
Exactly. Or imagine you're presenting to a nonprofit board of directors made up of hardcore investors demanding a 10-year economic ROI, sitting right next to the Devout, who only want to hear about the immediate moral imperative of feeding the hungry.
That sounds like a tense boardroom.
It is. How do you navigate the friction when the different faces in the exact same room want entirely different things from the exact same pile of money?
That is a fascinating tension to consider. It really proves how volatile and complex human motivation can be. You've given us all a lot to chew on today. Thank you to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the psychology of giving.
It's been great.
And remember, before you go, be sure to visit Nonprofit.Courses. It is an incredible hub to explore more resources, find the original texts we discussed, and take your understanding of these concepts even further.
You won't regret it.
Check out Nonprofit.Courses today. Thanks for exploring with us, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.